Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls and everything in between, I'm Zen and welcome to the second video in this form series. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so even though I said let's get into it, a little bit of a disclaimer here. Even though we are going to show you a bit later on how to make these forms much nicer looking, this isn't really the series which deals with making the most beautiful forms and the most artistic forms on the planet. These are the sort of basic tools to get them in the right sort of shape and position of where you want them to be before you apply all the beauty hacks to them. Okay, so I just want to get that out of the way first. With that being said, the first thing we're going to do, or the next thing we're going to do, or whatever it is we're going to rename our form. I want to keep this one so we've got a history of the forms that we've made. Okay, so I'm just going to go to File, Save As, and call it Login 2. Okay, and also what I'm going to do here is just change the address from this one, from Login 1 to Login 2, so that we're still looking at the same form. Right, so how can we change it? How can we make it look nicer? One of the first things I would say is that at the moment we're using a standard 2-column layout. Okay, the first column is really where the labels are, second column is where the input fields are and the interactive buttons. Some people would prefer their website to have a single column design with the label on the top with the form field below it. So that's what we're going to do in our first little change. And that's actually quite easy to do, because all we're going to do here is to change the labels from an inline block, which allows block level elements to be next to them, to a block level element which does not like to share its line. And literally all we need to do there is to delete the word inline and the hyphen, save it, and we already have quite a dramatic change. Now the next thing I want to do is to center everything. When we look at this, even though that looks centered and it's actually not far off it, it's not perfectly centered. Okay, and I want it perfectly centered, and obviously our login button is gone off on a skew width. So first thing we're going to do, or next thing we're going to do, is just get rid of the login button margin. We'll fix it in a bit. And we're going to get rid of the margin right in the label as well. When we save that, again, you know, not real big difference, but what we want to look at here, and I've got the developer consoles open, that's F12 on your keyboard, is in order to center things properly, it needs to be centered inside the form. At the moment, our form, as we can see here, is the entire width of the page, okay, because it has no width assigned to it. So again, as a block level element, it takes up the whole area. Remember, a block level element, even if it has a set width, it still reserves the whole area for it. But it does mean that you know, alignment are based on its current size, and because it hasn't got one defined for it, by default it is full page. So we're going to change that. The way we're going to do that is by using the form class itself, which is login. And we're just going to set it at a width of 160 pixels. Now the reason why I've chosen 160 is this. Our text fields are set at a width of 150, but we've also got borders, and we might change our borders in a bit. Might make them wider, might even make them disappear, but we need to allow some flexibility of what they will do. Okay, so setting at 160 just means it's a few pixels larger. Probably these are what, maybe 1 or 2 pixels wide, so it may be 8 pixels wider than the whole of the form fields, and that's fine. So we'll do that, and we'll notice there is literally no change, and that's absolutely fine because we haven't sorted out our labels. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is change text align from right to center, but also we're going to change our labels to the same width of the form, and there's no reason for them not to be. Okay, if we don't give them a width, by default I think labels will still be the smallest as possible, even with the display block onto it. But we'll do that and save it, and we can see they have now moved to be centered. Okay. Also with the login, so with the form itself, we're just going to get rid of any paddings that it may have by default. Okay, put it in 0 because it doesn't matter if it's pixels or rem or whatever. 0 times anything is 0. Okay, we can see it's not made any difference, but it's always a good idea to do that. Next thing we want to think about is our login button. We really want this to be centered, so we've got to work out how to do that. So the way we're going to deal with this is by, first of all, giving our login button, the submit button, an actual width. I'm going to give it a width of 55 pixels because, again, whenever you're using margins, they need to have a defined width. There is a weird little thing with input fields. Even though they are, in theory, block level elements, they don't always possess all of the attributes of it correctly. But if we define it as a block element, it will inherit them properly. And I'll explain what I mean. So here we've already set the width to 55. We just save it. See, there's literally no difference because I think it is the correct width. But now if we do a margin and we're saying for our login button, we don't want any top or bottom margin, and we're going to set left and right as auto. For a true block level element, that will be enough. We save that and we see nothing happens. However, if we put in display block and then save that, we can see straight away it centers itself. So that's a weird little thing, and I'm not sure if that is just in Chrome or if it's in the other browsers as well. And this also applies to actually our text field as well. Okay, so again, if I do this as display block, and then what we'll do is that we'll get rid of that margin bottom and just change it to margin. So we don't want any margin at the top. We want auto on the right. We want that 5 pixel on the bottom and auto on the left, and save it. Now when I save it, we should just see it move ever so slightly. Okay, now you might say, well, hang on a minute, how come that's massively jumped down? And that's because, if you remember, we originally put in these BRs. So if we delete the BRs, sorry, I think earlier I misspoke. I actually think these might be inline block by default because they're all on a line in the previous video. So my apologies. I'm making things up as I go along. Anyway, if we get rid of those BRs and we save that, there we go. Okay, they're now on top of each other, and that's exactly how we want it centered. And so for a lot of people, that's how they want it. And you can change the way it looks a bit by perhaps putting in bottom margins and stuff like that, and that's absolutely fine. However, now we're doing it this way, perhaps using the labels isn't the nicest look. Okay, these labels are no longer the nicest way. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to save it again. This time save it as number 3 and save that. And of course we're going to rename this one to 3 as well. This way it gives us the history of all them. There we go. And there is an alternative to using labels, and that is using placeholders. Okay, and placeholders are exactly what they sound like. They are bits of text which you can put into your fields, which are only there until somebody actually fills something in. And so we can go into the input field, and inside here we can add the word placeholder, and then inside the double quotes we put in what we want. So again, we're going to put in username, and we'll do the same for the password. In fact, in placeholder we'll put username, in the username we'll put in username or email address, because that's what we're going to allow later on in our forms. So when we save this, we can see it turns up on here, and with that, that means we can get rid of the labels. There is actually another scenario where we still keep the labels, but again, we'll get to those as we need to. And again, we just save it. And there it goes. Now you can see that this looks a bit messy now because we've got username or email address and the address bit doesn't fit in. So we'll just get rid of the word address because I think everybody knows what email means. There you go, username or email and password. And that works absolutely fine. Okay, absolutely fine. However, now we can do that and we'll just, there's no reason why they can't be done side by side. There are many websites where the login section is actually at the top of the page in the header area, either right next to or above the navigation bar. And that might have a height restriction, but may have more than enough width. So if you got a width restriction, this is the good format for it. If you've got a height restriction, then actually what we want to do is go back to almost how it was when we first wrote this in HTML. So again, let's just quickly resave this. So login number 4. Let's just reopen up the live server so we don't get any issues. Okay, and then with the label, since we don't have labels anymore, we can actually get rid of that CSS. That's no longer required. We're going to get rid of the login form code as well because we don't actually need that anymore because we're about to go horizontal. So all we need is the text field and the submit. We still need the width. We may not need the margin, but we're going to get rid of the display block and display block in this one as well. We'll save that and we'll see them next to each other. And then really, you know, we can change these a bit because top and bottom text fields, and what we might want is maybe again the 5 pixel margin left and right. You can see it spaced them out, but you could change that if you wanted to. And with the submit button, because we've already got the 5 margin left and right there, we can get rid of that. Oops. In fact, we don't see any change there because of, I say, there's only a few pixels changes. And I know these look very, very simple. And again, this is what this is meant to do. We're not trying to do complicated ones at the moment. Okay. I'm trying to show you how real life login forms will look like. However, people might say, come on, let's make it a little bit nicer looking. One of the first things we can do is to center the placeholder text, because I'm just one of the people where I think center aligned stuff looks quite nice. Not in everything, but in a lot of things I think it works really well. And that is more than possible. We just need to reference it correctly. And the way we do it is that is a kind of parent-child relationship, because really the placeholder is an attribute of the input field. So we need to reference the input field and then the attribute. Okay, so, and you can see where I'm putting it here, it's in between the 2 existing rules because it is part of this. So I'd always put the attribute rules underneath the main element, or the CSS rule that contains it, that controls that element. So login text field, and then notice it's a double colon placeholder. Okay, and we just use the text align rule and set it to center. Save that, and I just think even that small change makes a huge amount of difference. Okay, and like I said, this is only about doing some minor changes to these forms. We'll do some proper changes when we actually start making the websites. This is all just showing you the basics for you to work with. And plus the fact your login forms are generally quite straightforward. But one thing we can do is perhaps increase the size of the height of the form fields themselves. So let's do that. So height of 20 pixels. Okay, and then we're going to put in, let's change the border. So border, 2 pixels. Still going to keep it solid. In fact, let's go for outset, just make it slightly different. And then let's go for AAA. I think that's quite a nice shade. Okay, so you can see it just gives it a little bit of standing out, makes it slightly different. Now our button no longer looks like it fits in, so we just need to do the same thing. We can keep the width as it is, but we'll set the height to the same, which is 20 pixels. And again, we can set the border the same as well. So border, 2 pixels. Outset. And the height doesn't look like it has changed. We have to ask ourselves, why hasn't this login button changed? Okay, our CSS looks like it's okay. Got the same height setting as the text field, but it's smaller. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to have a look at the web developer tools in Chrome. So we're going to press F12 and we're going to open up the form. First thing we're going to do is just check the password. I mean, it's the same as the username, and we check it and we see it's got a center there of 20. Okay, and we've got padding and margin values. Okay, so 2 plus 2 is 4, padding of 1, both top and bottom, that's 6. So it really should be 26 in total. Okay, we see we've got a height there of 20. When we go to submit button itself, for some reason it lives in a slightly different format. Okay, I don't know if this is an issue with Chrome. In fact, we'll have a look in a minute. We'll open it up in Firefox and see if Firefox sees it as anything different. But we can see that it's got a height setting, even though we say 20 here, it's got a height setting of 14. But it's 14 in total, because again, 2 lots of borders, so it's 2, 4, 5, 6, including the padding. 6 plus 14 is 20. So for some reason, the box model of this, the way it's calculated the height for the button is different from the input fields. So what we're going to do now is just quickly see if this is the same with Firefox and Opera. So I'm going to copy the address, and now I'm going to open up in Opera and Firefox. So Firefox and Opera. Okay, so here's Firefox. Paste and go. And you can see it's the same here on Firefox. And it's probably going to be the same on Opera. Yeah, so that's, again, this is a weird thing with the box model. For some reason, the buttons are being treated differently from the input fields. So what we need to do is to adjust the button value. Okay, we're going to adjust this button value and increase it by 6. Okay, so submit. So instead of height of 20, give it a height of 26. We'll save that, and now it's the same size. Okay, and again, this is something I didn't expect to happen, but it's happened, and we have to learn how to deal with it, and that's how it is. If it was just an issue with Chrome, I might have had to think of a different way of dealing with it, because setting a rule like that across all of the browsers mean that it will only be correct in Chrome and not in the others, and that's not what we want. There are definitely different ways around it. A CSS Chrome specific rule, see if that worked. But again, this is where it gets messy, so sometimes finding other solutions is the better option. Like I said, we weren't looking at doing anything major with these, and just to point out that when you click in there you go, see, it disappears. These videos aren't meant to be groundbreaking. I'm sorry if you thought they were going to be, because you got me, that's not going to happen. These videos are just showing you the simple formats and how to get things in roughly the correct place in order for you to then to really apply the style stuff that you want to do with it. Like I said, we will be doing more stylistic work later on once we get completed forms and actually start to incorporating those forms into a website themselves. These are just standalone forms, so that it doesn't really work as well. We will be building a complete website, a couple of complete websites actually, where we will see some slight different changes to the forms and how we format them. So really this is the end of the things that we need to do with the login. We're going to use this information and take it forward to start building our registration pages and start making some more in-depth forms. So that's the end of this video. Hopefully it's been useful. I do know I do go on, but I'm trying to give you the right info. Please like, subscribe, comment. If you don't like it, then please, tell me why you don't like it. Am I talking too much? Am I not giving you the right information? Whatever, let me know. I'm lonely. I want people to talk to me. But that's the end of this video, and I'll see you next time. This is Zen, signing out.